welcome back to B-Side Banter. This is episode 25, and I'm here with Joe Donnelly from KildareJoe is your channel name, and I've been following you for a little bit. You do a lot of music review, music lists, just talking just about music in general. And I was telling you this before we started, but I just really love like the aesthetic of your channel. You're sitting in your armchair, and you've just got this big wall of music behind you. It's really cool. Also, as I'm Canadian, but I'm living
Yeah.
in America. But as you know, a North American, we really just love other accents. So the fact
Okay.
that you're from Ireland, you've got an Irish accent that also is just like adds to the aesthetic, in my opinion. So anyway, Joe, I'm
Good.
super happy to have you on, and I'll just kick it to you to maybe just like
Yeah.
give us a little bit more about what you do on your channels.
Yeah. Well, Tyler, I'm really delighted to be on your program and your channel, and thanks so
Mm,
much for asking me. I was really flattered because I've been doing this for since October 1st last year.
mm,
So coming up to a year of doing the channels on Instagram and TikTok. They're the exact same
mm.
videos, but a lot of people are on Instagram, but they're not on TikTok, and vice versa.
Of course. Yeah.
And I wanted to do something really. I wanted to take up a hobby that involved music because my background originally was in radio, in music radio for 16
Oh, awesome.
years. Yeah.
Wow.
And then I changed careers in 2018. And,
Mm,
since then, I still obviously love music and all that. So I kind of, I wanted to do something that was as close to being back on the radio, but not being on the radio.
mm,
And for about 3 months last summer or 2 months last summer, I really looked at what was going on TikTok with other music content creators. And I saw a lot of
mm,
vinyl appreciation channels and vinyl appreciation. There was a huge amount of it, really, really well
mm.
produced, really sharp edits, really clever. But there was an awful lot of it. And I realized that,
Yeah.
as you can see behind me here, I really do have quite an awful lot of CDs. And I've
Yeah.
collected them over the years and I've never thrown them out. And suddenly it was
Mm.
like a eureka moment. It was like, now I know why I never threw any of this stuff out, was
Yeah.
because finally, at this stage, years later, someone actually might find this interesting. And when I began to
Yeah.
look through my collection, I realized that I had a lot of special editions and deluxe editions.
Mm.
Um, and that was because I worked in radio at the time when streaming was taking over and the labels were in panic mode and some of them were in death mode. They were dying and they didn't
Yeah.
know what to do. So their
Yeah.
reaction was to try and fleece, um, you know, older music fans by reissuing classic albums and adding in, B-sides, studio cuts, a little poster, a pair of socks, anything. Like it was
Yeah.
just the stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
There was absolutely no reason to re-release or
Yeah.
reissue stuff other than to make more money from collectors and fans. I guess perhaps idiots
Mm.
like me. Although I did get a lot of that stuff free when working in radio, because I was a
Yeah.
producer and a presenter. So anyway, that's a long way of sort of telling you what the motivation behind starting my channels. So
No, that's amazing.
yeah, I was quite surprised that they relatively quickly they became quite popular, and I think people liked two things. One was the memorabilia and the CDs are
Mm.
not very commonly seen. Like I said,
Mm.
there's so much vinyl love out there that there's none for CDs. And then secondly, I suppose it's something that we can touch on later or come back to, and that's about presentation. And it's a word that I like to use a lot, and it's called authenticity. And if you're authentic
Mm.
and you give your opinion and you stick to your guns, people know
Yeah.
they appreciate that. If you're not
Mm.
authentic or you're trying to be something you're not, or you're sort of, I've always felt that for many years, especially working
Mm.
in media, whether it's in writing or television or radio. You got to be yourself.
Mm.
You got to find your voice and
Yeah.
stick to it,
Yeah.
and I think people appreciate that.
Yeah. Absolutely. And that kind of translates into, if you are doing reviews, kind of like you said, not necessarily giving something a negative review because that's the majority of what's happening, or giving something a
Precisely.
positive review because that's what people are doing.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, I think that's people realize that even though they might argue with you in the comments, and some
Well,
people might be nasty. I think for the most
argue is
part.
yeah, argue is one word.
Yeah.
Abuse, a torrent of
Yeah.
abuse, is another way of putting it.
Yes.
I
Yeah.
don't know
Absolutely.
if I might as well mention it now, like because we can come back to it later as well. Like
Yeah.
there were two particular ranking
Mm.
videos that I did that it really
Okay.
exercised people. One was the
Mm.
Radiohead albums ranked, and the other was Pink Floyd. And
Okay.
like
Okay.
I genuinely had no idea that people would get so upset. I was
Mm.
accused of rage bait, which is completely untrue. That's not me. It's completely untrue.
Yeah.
I was
I know.
accused of all sorts of things, not having a clue. You don't know anything. Never rank
Hmm.
again. You know, and
Yeah.
a
Of
lot of
course.
some nasty stuff as well, which I didn't.
Yeah. Of
You know, but
course. Yeah.
people just say
Yeah.
anything online.
That is
Um,
that's the
yeah,
internet, and it's
it is.
horrible. And actually, to give you a little bit of support with your Radiohead ranking, you ranked basically exactly how I would rank the Radiohead
Okay,
albums. The only
great.
difference would be in, I think, I can't remember the exact order, but like your bottom three. I think there were one or two that I would switch, but like that's not as important as your top five, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So it was literally, as I was watching it, which I think I watched it. I can't remember where you put it out, but I think I watched it a few months ago. I don't know if I caught it exactly
It
when you
was
put it out or if it was a little bit later.
it
But
was this year. Yeah, it was earlier
okay,
this year. Yeah, it's
yeah,
probably
okay.
pinned
So
kind of thing. Yeah.
I probably caught it as soon as you put it out, and I, as I was watching it, I was like, yes, and then I was like, yes, and then when you put okay, when OK Computer wasn't first, I was like,
Mm.
yeah, like this is
Yeah,
exactly
yeah.
what I think. And then you had Kid A second and In Rainbows first, I believe, which is
First, yeah,
exactly what,
yeah.
yeah, that's
I
exactly
think
how I would rank it.
that annoyed people because and I
Mm,
understand why, but because from the way I see it, OK Computer was hailed as such a masterpiece when it was released, and it is a
yeah,
masterpiece. I mean,
yeah,
I really
absolutely.
enjoy all of Radiohead's albums. I don't hate
Mm,
any of them. OK
yeah.
Computer was hailed as a masterpiece when it came out.
Mm,
It
hmm.
was deserved of the acclaim because the band wore it so difficult with such difficulty. Tom York hated
Yeah,
the reaction.
yeah,
That's well documented, and
yeah.
but for a lot of people, it was the pinnacle. And also, the
Mm,
songs and the lyrical content and the mood of that album resonates with a whole generation. And it resonates really deeply. And it could mean
mm,
to them, it could be the soundtrack to a breakup. It could be the soundtrack to falling in love. It could be the soundtrack to grief, to losing someone. It could be the soundtrack to graduating from college or anything like that. So I get that it's
mm,
important and precious to people. And they'll be upset if someone says, no, it's not the best album. But I genuinely came at it with the approach of I've been listening to Radiohead since day one, and for me, In Rainbows trumps OK Computer because of the inventiveness, the two
mm,
sides to it, the songs,
yeah,
the lyrics,
yeah,
everything about it, everything about it. Even though OK Computer is brilliant as well. And the other thing is that
yeah.
it shows that there is always a bit of a divide, I think, with Radiohead fans. Everything up to OK Computer, everything after OK
Mm,
Computer, and that's
mm,
exemplified by people who absolutely trash King of Limbs all the time, and I think that's
yeah.
completely unjustified. I think King of Limbs is a stunning album.
Mm, yeah.
You know,
Yeah, yeah, and I get, like, I think a lot of the argument is just like that OK Computer was more groundbreaking than any of the
yeah,
albums just because of, what they did at the time that they did it, and I get that, but I just feel like In Rainbows is like them at their absolute
yeah,
best. Like most creative, like just most raw and emotional as well. Like
yeah.
it felt just so amazing. And like, yeah, sure, maybe you could say like, well, without OK Computer, there wouldn't be In Rainbows, but it's like that it doesn't really matter. That's kind of not really a great argument
That
because I still
yeah.
prefer In Rainbows more.
Yeah, that's a moot point because I mean you could say that
Yeah,
about any album's canon. You could say there'd be
exactly.
no Sergeant Pepper's without Revolver. I mean, it doesn't. It's not. It
Mm.
doesn't really bear significance. I mean, I remember there was one comment that's still getting reaction. 7 months later, and it was a guy who said Pablo Honey was their
Crazy.
best work, and everything after it is just
Whoa.
pretentious nonsense that people pretend to like. And he doubled
That's
down, and
crazy.
he's still doubling down. And I'm going,
That's
dude,
crazy.
that is crazy.
Yeah. Yeah,
you know.
there's a point like with comments where like you might engage a little bit
Yeah,
and then people start fighting with each other and then you're like
yeah,
I'm out of this now. Like
absolutely. Yeah,
you guys can all keep fighting.
yeah.
I'm done arguing.
Well, what really tickles me is when someone leaps to your defense, and you didn't even
Mm.
ask them to, and you don't even know who they are, and
Yeah, yeah,
that I always get a good kick out of that because, well, one,
yeah.
it's quite a nice thing for someone to do, and it saves me
Mhm.
having to do it because I don't really want to engage, particularly with trolls. I mean, look, I don't mind if someone wants
Yeah,
to have a discussion, that's great, but if someone
yeah.
is like, that's horrible, and you're a jackass, I'm not going to bother with someone like that,
Yeah, yeah,
you
exactly.
know? Yeah.
Yeah, and like I don't know, you either just like don't comment. What I've pretty much like come down to is I'm just like really sarcastic or snarky or something. Like I'll just like reply back with like either just like an emoji or like some sort of
Yeah.
like snarky comment, and then I'll just
Yeah.
stop because
Yeah.
you got to engage to some degree for the algorithm, but at the same time you
Exactly.
but at the
Yeah.
same time you
Like
don't want to empower them.
you don't want to, like, no, but I mean, you're absolutely right. It's kind of ridiculous. You feel a bit dirty having to respond because it does help, engagement helps.
Yeah.
But at the
Yeah.
same time, you're going, I wouldn't greet this person on the street, I mean, like,
Yeah.
but I can tell you now from experience, and again, when I worked in radio, you would get text messages, get off the radio. That's you're rubbish. This is shit. Whatever. So
Mhm.
I've years of dealing with this. It's not a massive big deal, but I can tell you now for
Yeah.
sure the best response is no response because if you think about it, their comment is left hanging there rather awkwardly, rather,
Mm.
just a little bit cringy that someone has taken time out of their day to leave this comment. There's no reaction from the creator, the original
Mm.
poster. There's no reaction from anybody. It just looks a bit sad. So trust me,
Yeah.
I really do. Anyone watching or anyone listening to this, just don't engage. It's the best thing because
Yeah.
you know what happens then? You reply, and then it's on your mind that they're going to reply
Yeah.
back.
It's true.
And then you're
It's
in
true. Yep.
like George Bernard Shaw put it famously. He said
Mm.
that I never like, and he was referring to critics, and this is 100 years ago or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I don't like to wrestle with pigs, because the
Mm.
pig enjoys it and I get dirty,
Yeah.
and that's it. That's
Yeah.
it. About having it out with internet trolls, the same principle applies. I'd feel strongly about
Absolutely.
that.
Yeah, no,
You know,
absolutely.
yeah,
That's so true. To go to another thing that I'm sure is controversial, maybe not as much as these two videos, but you something that you kind of put in our outline is are you missing something from Charlie XCX's Brat album? And
yeah.
I
Well,
feel like that's a totally different audience. Like I'm
yeah,
sure like with the Radiohead and the Pink Floyd, you're a little bit in like maybe some like older millennial middle aged and even older than that people, maybe some young people that are just discovering them, I don't know, but Charlie XCX's Brat, that would open you up to the worst of the worst trolls
really.
in all reality. Oh
Wow.
yeah, and maybe
Okay.
it just didn't get on people's feeds, but her following and like the people that would be kind of in that realm are can get so nasty. I've
Are they
seen some.
worse? Are they more animated than Swifties?
Um, not necessarily.
Yeah,
Because yeah, Swifties can be really bad. Like there's certain fan bases that are really
yeah.
can be insane.
Well, I
But
should
it's
qualify.
probably close.
I should qualify why I put that in.
Mm.
No, it's for a couple of reasons. I saw someone recently comparing that album to OK Computer, and I was like, okay,
Oh,
I need
really?
to. Now they
Mm.
weren't comparing it. I think musically, it wasn't a critical comparison,
Sure,
but
sure.
I think it was about cultural impact or something like that. And
Mm.
look, I would be an easy target for someone to go, old white dude hasn't a clue about pop music, but Grandpa Simpson, old man yells at cloud. So I don't want to come across ever as old man yells at cloud. So believe it or not, I really do listen to an awful lot of music, especially new music that isn't aimed at me. Okay.
Mm.
And I do that
Sure.
because if I'm going to criticize something, I want to hear it first and say, well,
Yeah.
this is why I don't like it, or this is why it doesn't appeal to me. So I
Mm.
listened. I've listened to Brat, and
Mm.
I sort of go, right. Well, that's unless I'm mistaken, that's a really good pop music album. It's pop music.
Yeah.
Um, like, and that's great. And again, I'm not having a go at pop music. I mean, pop music is brilliant. I consumed pop music when I was younger, a kid, listening to the radio in Ireland, recording the chart shows, like just
Mm.
obsessed, absolutely obsessed. So I really don't want anyone to take that wrong. I'm not saying, oh, pop music sucks. It doesn't, and it means something to someone. But I guess I'm a little puzzled as to why she and that album just seemed to dominate, last summer, and just became so huge. When I
Mm.
listen to it, I go, it's good, but is it really that awesome and amazing and cultural impact? I don't know. So that's where I'm coming
Yeah.
from.
That's yeah. And that is it is valid for sure. I think like cultural impact is definitely like she had her basically her whole like album rollout, which is really important thing in especially hip hop, but it translates in most genres anyway. Like there's got to be
Yeah,
some sort of marketing, right, that go, but her whole album rollout, I think is what a lot of people are referring to. And then the album, I think, also exceeded expectation. So I think
really.
those two things going hand in hand, um, make made for quite an explosion
Okay.
of fandom around the album. I know, like a big thing, like if you read, like say a Pitchfork article, like the Pitchfork review on it, I know like a big thing, and I felt this way about the album as well. But a big thing was that it was a pop album that took a lot of risks sonically, because it's not like a pop album. It's not like pop songs that are going to really make the radio. Like these songs are more like there's a lot of like club sounds. There's a
I
lot
was just
of
going to say, yeah, it's definitely clubby, isn't it? It's a lot. There's a
yeah,
club edge to a lot of the songs.
there are for sure. So it's kind of like the album sonically is taking a lot of risks, but then on top of that, quite vulnerable from Charli XCX, what she was like talking about lyrically. So I think those two things as well go hand in hand, like kind of feed into all of this. Like to me, it's like it's not like the best album ever. To me, it was the perfect storm of just everything being really great, all falling together and
Yeah.
falling into place. Um, yeah, because and then
Okay.
and
Well,
then on top of all of this, like the TikTok phenomena of
yeah,
almost like several of those songs becoming viral on TikTok and dances,
yeah,
and so you have like all of these things, and they just like snowball into this one massive like cultural moment. I think is what happened. I really enjoyed the album. Do I listen to it all the time? Not really, because I don't really listen to a lot of club music like that all the time.
yeah,
There's like two or three songs that I really like and that I'll probably listen to, you know,
yeah,
maybe a few times a year. But yeah, I think I feel like that's more so where all of it's happening, is just like all of these good things, or people could argue great things. There was no miss, like in terms
yeah.
of like the marketing team was great, lyrically it was great, sonically it pushed boundaries. I think it's a little crazy to compare it to OK Computer, even if you're talking about cultural stuff, but I don't know.
Yeah, they may have been ever so slightly tongue in cheek, but look, I'm glad that you have explained that, and that there was that it resonated lyrically as well with people, because that's really important. I mean, that's a big thing. I mean, that, again, to go back to Radiohead, that's one of the reasons why they succeeded in the late '90s, was
Mm,
that their lyrics were very, very meaningful. You know,
yeah,
I'm a
yeah,
creep, I'm a weirdo. What the hell am
mm,
I doing here? I don't belong here. I mean, if that isn't
yeah,
an adolescent cry, that's as
yeah,
old as time, then nothing is.
yeah, absolutely. Well, and like it's to me, I don't know, it is kind of apples and oranges, because like there were a few lyrics where I felt like they were like a little out of touch, because like it was more like a vulnerable album from her. So she
Okay.
had a lot of explaining about how she felt out of place in the world of fame, and like so that doesn't
Yeah.
necessarily relate to people like Tom York just always is relating to people, right?
Yeah.
it is like it's definitely different, but I think, like I said, I think just all of these things falling into place just made for just this
Okay.
huge cultural thing. And then she was playing like really big shows, everything was selling out, everybody wanted to be there, be in
Yeah.
those moments. It was like similar to Chapel Roan, really, like that whole
Yeah.
phenomenon, cultural explosion that happened with
Yeah.
Chapel, right? So that was a little
Yeah.
different in the sense that like Chapel's album has been around for a while, but like all of a sudden it was just like, holy, like
Yeah.
this girl's huge.
Yeah, the Grammys last year, was it Chappell Roan, Billie Eilish, and Sabrina Carpenter? It was like the Holy Trinity, or it was just
Mm,
really, it was really obvious they had all. It was that arrival of those
mhm.
three in particular, and Doechii, I suppose, as well. So it's yeah. Well, that you certainly you've put it very well on Charlie XCX now. Now I should do a video on that album and just rob
Yeah,
all
like
your
I
analysis.
yeah, it's an interesting thing. And I think like it is hard if you don't enjoy the album like sonically to understand like
Yeah,
why it's as big as it was. Like, and there's a lot of people that still are kind of like, oh, that's ridiculous. Like, you listen to Charlie XCX, you know what I mean? Like, there's
yeah.
still going to be a lot of people that are like that, but I think critically it just was extremely well received. And then,
Yeah.
yeah, there was just a lot of trickle down from that, obviously.
Okay. No, I'm
Yeah,
glad you explained that. Because I was kind of wondering.
yeah.
I
Well, and I
just
like,
I think I need to come in with some breaking news. No, I'm
yeah,
serious.
yeah, go for it.
Ozzy Osbourne, he's gone to God.
Oh no,
Yeah. Wow.
that's horrible.
Oh man, I'll have to do a video on that. My
Yeah,
goodness.
absolutely. That's was
Um.
was was this something that was anticipated to be happening soon? I
No.
know that
Just
he like I
I'm looking at my feed
yeah.
on X. So sad, bloody legend. Ozzy Osbourne dies just weeks after farewell show. Of course, he
Mm,
did that big show in Villa Park in Birmingham, where they're from, just a couple of weeks
yeah.
ago, with an absolutely stellar lineup. You would sell your granny to have gotten tickets to go to that. It
Yeah.
was absolutely
Yeah.
phenomenal. Everybody who was
Yeah.
anybody was there. And 76 is a young age these days, but I mean, look, Ozzy has been
Oh
through
yeah. Yeah.
several different lifetimes, and
Yeah.
he
Absolutely.
wouldn't have had a fresh salad every day. Let's put it that, particularly during the
Absolutely.
70s.
Yeah.
Wow.
Am I correct in saying that for that concert he had to be sitting the whole time? Like he
Yeah.
wasn't like
Yeah. So
yeah, okay.
they wheeled him out quite literally. And,
Yeah.
someone had said to me beforehand, he actually sings better than he talks. And I said, well, I hope so, because no one wants to listen to him talk. So,
Yeah.
look, I don't know how many songs he did. So I'm not going to say, because someone will follow up and go, you idiot, he only did 4 songs. So look, his
Yeah.
appearance, I did see clips of his appearance, and it was decent enough for a man who, as we,
Mhm.
have sadly discovered tonight, really was on his way out, to use a
Yeah.
euphemism. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, that's
Mm.
incredible. Well, it's not
Mm.
incredible, but it's a sad bit of news there. But he
It
was
is,
singing
yeah,
from
absolutely.
the chair. I mean, it was a spectacle that was, while really great to see.
Mm.
I couldn't help look at it and go, God, that's the poor man. And I don't mean to sound condescending, but it's not great. I mean, look, I guess there's no doubt that he and Sharon and his family were like, you should do this, you should do this. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
brilliant. But you just don't like to see
Mhm.
rock and roll heroes like that. Don't
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah. Yeah, it
it
was
was
different.
yeah.
It,
No, I was
it's
just going
like
to say.
different. Oh, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I can't remember who it was recently, was talking about the difference with dying young. Or it's better to burn out rather than to fade away. It'll come
Mm,
to me in a
yeah.
second, but they'd mentioned Kurt Cobain, or someone like that, and they were like, "Look at
Yeah.
his legacy. It's
Yeah.
untouchable.
Yeah.
You know." So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. It's true. Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And like there is a big difference between like him have like kind of sitting while he's performing and somebody like Joni Mitchell doing it. because like
Yeah.
for him
Yeah, of
his
course.
music
Yeah.
is so full of energy, right? Whereas with Joni
Yeah.
Mitchell, it's like she's done whole concerts when she was able-bodied to sitting. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like she like that sometimes in folk that's like a normal thing, but yeah, it is weird to see somebody that is such high like has music that's all just high energy and like
Yeah.
it kind of demands that stage presence and somebody known for their performance and stage
Yeah, of
presence to
course.
be sitting. It would be unusual,
Yeah, I mean, his
but
performances are
definitely.
mythical. His performances
Yeah.
blend reality and fiction, biting the heads off birds
Mm.
and bats and all the rest of it. I mean, there's
Yeah.
just so much lore
So
at
crazy.
this stage. You'd have
Yeah.
to dig hard to find the truth. But what we do know, he was a,
Yeah.
a charismatic, compelling frontman.
Mm.
He was a
Mm.
decent singer. He lived the
Mm.
rock and roll stereotype. I mean, he was up there with the likes of Keith Moon, as a
Mm.
Hellraiser. And
Yeah.
it caught up with him, of course. But
Yeah.
there's no doubt that his contribution to metal, to guitar music with his band, Black Sabbath, who a lot of people say, invented heavy metal with their debut album.
Yeah. Yeah.
His legacy is sealed. I mean, there'll be lots of obituaries, but I think you do have to go back to the early '70s and what Sabbath did. And Ozzy Osbourne was a fundamental part of that, even though, Tony Iommi and the other band members were responsible for creating such a great sound at the time that
Mm.
scared people, literally and
Yeah.
figuratively.
Yeah. Yeah, I was just talking about this with on another episode, just about like the whole like boogeyman in especially in like conservative Christian like
Yeah,
circles with rock music, and like Ozzy Osbourne would impersonate that,
yeah,
like every that would be what people would call the devil's music. Like you said, it scared people.
completely.
And like looking back now, there's music that you're like, this isn't like, you know, like that this Ozzy Osbourne doesn't even touch some of this music
Yeah.
in terms of
Oh, I
like
mean, yeah,
lyrics
absolutely.
and darkness. And
Yeah.
but yeah,
No, I mean,
at the time it was so crazy.
some of the stuff that you can hear now, or some of the stuff that followed, makes Black Sabbath albums sound like the soundtrack for Peppa Pig. There was so much moral panic when Black Sabbath came about that really, in hindsight, you realize, like a lot of panics that happen, there was no need for such outrage or indignation. The band
Mm,
themselves were pretty normal guys, really, from the black country
yeah.
in England, and their upbringing was working class, and they just liked having a party, and they liked making loud, heavy rock music, and so
Mm,
many other bands were the same, Zeppelin and many others. So yeah, Sabbath, they just did it. They just did it very well, and they're in the right place at the right time with a great aesthetic and a great sound, and it worked, and it, their influence is just so huge. And again, I think you
mm,
saw that influence in the lineup for the festival, for the one day event at Villa Park in Birmingham. Phenomenal lineup, as we were saying earlier. You know,
yeah. Yeah, it's crazy. And um I guess you obviously seem very familiar with Black Sabbath. I'm probably like moderately familiar with them. But I feel like the influence that they had on music, like we said before, like creating basically a genre. A lot of people credit
yeah.
their debut album to starting metal. Um, where would you kind of put them if you thought like influential bands in history?
Mm.
Would you put them in like a top 10? Would you put them in a top 20? Like I
I,
know
I
that's really tough.
no, I think I'd almost put them in a top 10 for guitar based music, or for hard rock or heavy rock. I would I
Yeah.
would put them in a top 10, particularly for that first album and for Paranoid. Faith No More did a really great cover of War Pigs. Um, you
Yeah.
know, there's a band that fuses rap and metal, and it shouldn't. You think, why are they covering War Pigs? Well, they are, because they've massive respect for Black Sabbath. I think
Mm,
Queens of the Stone Age would owe a debt to Black Sabbath. Like, you wouldn't have to look hard. You could read any autobiography of a '90s big selling hard rock band, grunge band, or anyone like that. And I guarantee you,
Mm.
Black Sabbath would crop up. The Beatles, Black Sabbath, bands like that. Massive influence on their sound. Yeah, maybe even more so
Mhm.
than Zeppelin. Now that I think about it, um,
Yeah.
on that hard rock sound. Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I'm putting you so on the spot here, but what would be some other bands that you'd put on this list? You said Beatles, Black Sabbath.
That's a good question. Uh, Beatles, Black Sabbath, the Stones, I suppose. But the Stones
Mhm.
pilfered a lot. I mean, look, I know Zeppelin pilfered a lot as well. Jimmy Page
Yeah.
basically stole a lot of blues guitar riffs from older blues
Mhm.
legends, and the Stones did likewise. Um, influential bands on rock and roll. God, yeah, you have kind of put me on the spot. I mean, I think like there's bands like Aerosmith and Cheap Trick. Like there's bands like that, which you know, for a time it was naff to admit that they were an influence, on your sound. But
Mhm.
there's no doubt, because don't forget, that would have been a very dominant rock sound in the late '70s and
Yeah.
early '80s, and a lot
Yeah.
of Gen X bands were consuming most of their music, and they were most impressionable probably at that age,
Mhm.
and would go
Mhm.
on, and maybe even subconsciously it comes across in their sound. I was watching the documentary on MTV about Lollapalooza, and Jane's Addiction, who a lot of people feel were more influential than Nirvana. I
Mhm.
can't remember, one of the members of L7
Yeah.
said that Jane's Addiction sound funneled a lot of different influences as well, including funk.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, like you could sketch out influences through a lot of different musical family trees.
Mm.
Um,
Yeah.
but like,
Absolutely.
yeah, I think the big players of the '60s, the big classic
Mhm.
rock acts, like Dylan as well, of course, and Neil Young, Crosby, Stills, Nash,
Mhm.
and Young. I mean, even their influence is huge. You listen to Fleet Foxes,
Yeah.
and you go, oh, Crosby, Stills,
Yeah.
Nash, and Young.
Absolutely. Yeah. What do you think of like the Pixies?
Oh, I love the Pixies. I mean, like the
Mm.
Pixies to me are one of the most important bands, because, during my adolescent music discovery phase, as I call it,
Mm.
which I think everyone goes through, the Pixies
Yeah.
and the Stone Roses were probably the two biggest bands. And when I was in school, which I mean secondary school in Ireland, so that's like from the age of 12 to the age of 18. There was a band. My friends had a band, and I managed the band. In other words, I went along and got drunk. But they covered a lot of Pixies songs. They covered Tame, and they covered
Mm.
Cactus. So Come On
Mm.
Pilgrim and Surfer Rosa and Doolittle were three albums that completely soundtracked that period of my life. And unlike some
Yeah.
albums, they stayed with me for forever.
Yeah.
I've never tired of listening to Pixies, and I think their influence is huge. Kurt Cobain is on record as saying that "Smells Like Teen Spirit." He wanted that song to sound like, he wanted to rip off the Pixies. Basically, is what he's saying. I
Mhm.
think they're hugely influential. The loud, quiet, loud motif, or that particular style, has influenced loads of different bands. Um, you could possibly even think that you could possibly even say the hottest band right now in kind of a rock genre, Turnstile, maybe have wear a little bit of Pixies on their influence as well. And two
Yeah.
two
Yeah.
two quick things about the Pixies. I actually, years later, I ended up being a teacher for a
Mm.
brief period of time, and I was teaching a class once, and a guy asked me, he'd heard a band called the Pixies. And I was like, yeah, man, you got to listen to the Pixies. I was like, oh, this is great. I was kind of like, I had my Dead Poets Society moment. I was like, I'll
Yeah.
educate you with the Pixies. And I gave the kid a copy of Surfer Rosa on
Mhm.
CD. And I went home anyway. And this kid was like 14. And then I realized that CD cover has a naked lady on the front, her torso. And I thought, oh my God,
Yeah.
what if the mother comes in to complain?
Yeah.
But she didn't. And then the other one
Yeah. That's good.
is the other one is a little bit of a brag, which is I once got to interview Gil Norton, who's a producer, and he produced Doolittle,
Mm.
and it was a pleasure to talk to him about
Whoa.
working. Yeah, it was
Yeah.
great. He was really cool. It was great learning all about
Mm.
the technique, the process of working with Pixies,
Mm.
recording with Black Francis,
Yeah.
all of that. It was really cool.
Mm, yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah,
That's really cool. Yeah, that would be an awesome interview to be a part of for sure.
yeah, it was great.
Um, yeah, yeah. I find that like there's more, and I didn't like obviously am not necessarily around the age that could have grown up listening to the Pixies, but I listened to a lot of the Pixies, and I find that a lot of rock right now is kind of like feels very Pixie to me. Like you
Yeah,
mentioned Turnstile. Um I think like Fontaine's DC or whatever. I've
yeah,
never.
Fontaine's DC.
I don't know if they like want the French pronunciation or what, but
Oh
I
no,
usually
it's
go
just
that way. But
Fontaine's. Fontaine's DC. Yeah,
Fontaines,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
So anyway, I find that there's a lot of like Pixie influence there. Like I think of like a previous one, like Arctic Monkeys. Like I don't like
yeah.
obviously there's a lot of punk, but um, yeah, I don't know. I just feel like they have a lot of influence. And they're still going. They're still
Yeah,
touring.
of
Like
course.
they've been to Nashville twice in less than a year already. So it's
Really.
crazy.
Yeah.
They're just
I
going
did
for it. Yeah.
I did a top 10 my top 10 Pixies. I did that songs.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, I did that
Yeah.
a few months ago. That was good.
Okay.
People
Yeah.
people are a little less get a little less angry about songs as opposed to albums, you know.
Mm. Mm. Yeah. It's true. They'll still get angry, but
Oh
yes,
yeah. Oh yeah, big time.
they'll
Big
always
time.
get angry.
Yeah.
Um, let's talk about. I know this is probably like cliche, but you're from Ireland. Let's talk about Irish music,
Yeah.
Irish bands.
Yeah.
You, as a country, Ireland has had some phenomenal bands. Talk about influential bands.
Yeah.
Um, that's definitely been artists, bands. For a small country, I feel like there's been a lot of phenomenal music that has come out of there.
Mm.
What are some, in your opinion? You could, I guess, just say objectively too. But in your opinion, what are some of the best Irish bands or artists that have come out of the country there?
Well, I think, for me, I think like Tin Lizzy and Rory Gallagher are two artists, two acts that are probably, maybe for real music fans who know how to play an instrument. I don't, by the way, but for
Mm,
fans of guitar music who love the guitar, you can't get better than Thin Lizzy and Rory Gallagher. Thin Lizzy were
mm,
fronted by Phil Lynott, is his name,
mm,
and he was unique because in Ireland in the 80s and the 70s and 80s, there was probably about, you could count the number of black people who lived in Ireland on one hand. We were
mm,
just a very white race back then, a very white society, I mean. And Phil Lynott, or Phil Lynott, I believe it's Lynott, he really stood out because he was he was from mixed race parents, and his father was black, and he stood out, and he suffered a lot of racism growing up, and
sure, yeah.
he really had to kind of deal with that. And it wasn't it wasn't fun, obviously, but
Mm,
he used that to kind of give himself confidence and to believe in himself. And
mm,
he also happened to be a fantastic frontman, a great musician, and a really, really good songwriter. He's one
mm,
of the best songwriters that we've produced. And
mm,
then we're, and just like real rock anthems, like rock and roll
yeah.
anthems in the 80s, like stuff that stands the test of time. Rory Gallagher,
Mm,
a blues musician who would be up there with the likes of Eric Clapton and Jimi Hendrix,
mm,
a peerless guitar player, one of the best in the world ever. Tragically died
mm,
young in 95, I think it was the summer of 95. And
mm,
then but you also have some really interesting characters and bands from the Irish traditional music scene. So you have a
mhm.
band called the Dubliners,
Yep.
who kind of would have, yeah, and Luke Kelly is a famous member. Well, they're all famous, but Luke Kelly had
Yeah.
solo stuff as well. They really represented
Yeah.
that tradition. And then in the 80s, the Pogues blended punk and the Irish
Yep.
traditional music idiom,
Mhm.
and mashed them
Mhm.
together to great effect. And Shane MacGowan, of course, another charismatic frontman and another unique character. So that's kind of the legacy stuff. But I mean, you've got the Cranberries as well.
Yeah.
They're international acts. But like, there's bands that, unfortunately, in the 80s, every new Irish band suffered the tag of, "Are you going to be the next U2?" And they had to live with that. And unfortunately, the
Yeah.
British and the Irish
Yeah.
music press kept doing that. They kept labeling bands, and that was a lot of pressure, way too much pressure for bands to deal with. and there were some
Yeah,
brilliant
absolutely.
bands. And
Hmm.
one band in particular are called Whipping Boy, and their album Heartworm, I did a video on it recently, and it was somewhat of a cult classic in Ireland, but now it's really getting the recognition. Well, in the past 10 years, it's begun to get the recognition it deserves. And I mean, I
Mm.
would rank that album along with those great, existential albums of the mid to late 90s by the likes of Smashing Pumpkins, Radiohead. It's up there. It
Yeah,
really is, musically and lyrically especially.
yeah,
So that's the last century. But I think, Tyler, this century and these past 5, 6, 7 years, Irish music is just in such good health. It is in such good health across so many genres. We have never
yeah.
had a hip hop scene in Ireland that is as strong as it is now. We have never
Mm.
had, such a breadth of genres in Irish in music right now from Irish bands, whether it is folk rock, indie folk, garage, punk, you name it, Euro pop,
Mm.
anything. Like, it's there, and we have some really, really brilliant acts right now. And in the past couple of years, Fontaines DC do get a lot of attention. They're probably the biggest Irish band in the world right now. However,
Yeah, yeah.
on their coattails are a lot of different artists and a lot of different bands that are, just as good, and they're destined for big things if they can stick it.
Yeah. What would give us
Yeah,
some of these bands that maybe haven't broke over
yeah,
here in the US yet?
definitely. So first, I would go, well, CMAT. She's going to be really, really big. So CMAT is an Irish artist, singer songwriter, very much kind of like country pop, I think is how you describe it.
Okay.
She
Okay.
but she's more in common with Kate Bush than
Mm.
Taylor Swift. She's
Sure.
a
Yeah,
stunning
yeah, yeah.
voice. She's a witty,
Mm.
sharp songwriter, and her music is great. She's got
Mm.
an album coming out in August, and you should keep an eye out for that. You've got a band
I
from
will, yeah.
Northern Ireland called Chalk. They're really, really good, hard, garage, rough, punk edge. They're really great. You have a band that's very much a kind of a shoegazy kind of band called New Dad, and they have a new album coming out. I think possibly in September. They had an album last
Mm.
year, which was their debut, and that was on my top 10 albums of the year list. They're really, really
Oh,
good.
yeah.
Yeah, oh, absolutely
Awesome.
stunning. You've got some bands who are again crossing over with the Irish trad music scene. So there's a couple there. One is called The Scratch. They're really, really good.
Mm.
There's a band that have like absolutely won the critics over completely, and they're called Lankum, and their music is like trad music, but you could call it doom trad. Doom metal, which has a lot of again, I'm not a
Yeah.
musician, but like discordant, drony,
Yeah. Hmm.
unsettling kind of stuff. Lankum
Yeah.
are this band that I think they have two albums out now, and the second album, I think it was last year or the year before, just like critics are falling over themselves. It is stunning. But I know the producer of that
Hmm.
band. He's a friend of mine, and he loves that kind of stuff,
Yeah.
that doom metal. Um, then like, yeah, there's loads like that. Like, one of my favorite albums of the year so far is by a singer songwriter called Cian Kavanagh, and he's actually born in Houston, Texas, but they
Hmm.
moved back to Ireland, and he's made an album that celebrates kind of country music, Texas style, with
Hmm.
Irish rural um, life, but not
Hmm.
like it's the opposite of twee. There's a darkness running through this. Like, I'm going to be honest with you. Hear me out. Touch of Springsteen and the war on drugs here. Like, Cian
Hmm.
Kavanagh is the real deal. He's a really good
Okay.
songwriter. He knows his
Yeah.
stuff. But there's just so many. Yeah, it's really, really good at the moment. Yeah, definitely.
Mm. That yeah, I'll have to. I feel like I knew none of those bands. I think I've heard of New Dad.
Yeah,
Um,
possibly. KEXP played
but
someone recently. KEXP recently played a band called
mm,
Sprints. Actually, that's another one I wanted to tell you. Sprints, as in the verb, like
okay.
he sprints to the other side. KEXP played Sprints, and KEXP in Seattle, which is one of my favorite radio stations, they also play an Irish band called Pillow Queens, and Pillow Queens got signed
Mm,
to Sub Pop a couple of years ago, and they are
okay.
they're they're brilliant. I mean, they're a stunning band.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Hmm.
they're really good.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's yeah, it's always so interesting because um you get some of those bands like Fontaine's DC that
Yeah,
they come through, they're really popular, but then you miss out on so much great music if
yeah,
you kind of just focus on what's breaking in the area you're in, cuz like, you can be limited if you're in the US to who's breaking over here and not, see
yeah.
some great Australian bands, New Zealand
I was
bands,
just going to
UK
say, man,
bands, Irish bands.
I was just going to say Australia. Australia in
Mm,
the past 3 or 4 years has produced some brilliant punky
yeah.
krautrock, uh,
Hmm.
fast speed rock, whatever you want to call it. Just some really, really good stuff in the past few years. With Amel and the Sniffers probably being the most high profile, but there are loads
Mm,
of others.
yeah. Yeah, no, it's amazing. Some great bands to look out for. One thing, like, and maybe we can kind of wrap up along
Yeah,
these lines here. But how do you balance like listening to new music? Because clearly you listen to a lot of new music to know all these bands. How do you balance that with keeping up obviously with the music you grew up with? Like
yeah.
how do you are you just listening to music constantly?
Um, Look, with great difficulty is the short answer. So what I
Yeah.
would do is so no, but I mean like so in my in my typical work day, I get up in the morning, at 7:30, and then when I'm having breakfast, I'll listen to music. And what I'll do there is I might put on an album, or I'll put on a playlist of new songs, or and kind of and this is on Spotify, which obviously
Mhm.
we don't agree with the way Spotify treat their artists, but as I always say, do try and go and buy the physical copy if you can, and support the artist and so on. It is good for discovery. So I listen, and I think if something leaves an impression on my ear as I'm eating my cornflakes and reading emails, then I go, hang on, that must be good, because that just stood out to me, right? So that's one
Yeah,
way. And
sure.
then I will drive to work. I work in a brewery, so then I'll drive to work,
Mm,
and I will listen to music in the car. And then
mm,
sometimes in work, if the office is empty, I will put on music for 2 or 3 hours, and then on the drive home, I listen to music, and
mm,
that's kind of it. But it has to be strategic as well in some ways, because of the music channels that I do, which I love. So I want to be able to, I want to do them justice, and I think people appreciate when you put in a bit of effort, and kind of go, listen, here's 5 new songs you got to hear right now, and again, like,
mm.
I have to feel like really authentic about it. I have to go, no, I like that song. I'm definitely, I don't want to put if everyone, like, I'll give you a good example. One of the fun things is that I can admit that, say for example, I didn't have the Turnstile album in my half year list. So here are my favorite albums of the year so far at the end of June, and I had listened to Turnstile a couple of times and went, I don't know, I'm not really getting this. It's very clean. It's very There's something almost synthetic. Anyway, that makes me sound
Mhm.
pretentious. But there's a guy in work, one of the barmen in work, and he's like, no, he says, it's really good. You should go back and listen to it. And I did. And I went, oh, yeah, hold on a minute. And I was beginning, like, in that Turnstile album, and I'll do a video on this. I think you can pick out influences from The Smiths, The Cure, Limp Bizkit, Nirvana,
Mm,
Fugazi,
mhm.
and I was going,
Yeah.
that's great.
Mm,
That's really cool. This is really interesting. This and the Cars, sorry, the
yeah.
Cars in particular. I was going,
Mm,
this is a really good album, and I get it, and I love the fact that their live shows are completely chaotic, and I love the fact that people are stage diving again, and they're not standing at a concert holding up their phone. And I just love that. I love the energy, and I love the buzz and the joy it brings people,
man.
particularly younger people.
I think that that is just a really cool kind of perspective to have. Um, to be have that open mindedness that even sometimes on your first one or two listens, you might not just kind of fully get an album, but then
Yeah,
if you revisit it again, obviously if like other people aren't saying this album's any good, then you probably will never revisit it again. But
true.
if people are like, hey, this is something that's really cool, then to revisit, re-listen, yeah, it can be really powerful.
Yeah, look, Tyler, I mean, absolutely. I think you can always be wrong. You can always be right. But the main thing is to see if you're missing something, enjoy it. And, even if you don't really like it, don't trash something just because people are mad about it and that's their thing. You wouldn't like if someone did it to you. Have a debate about it, but there's no need to be, rude as well. Music is for everyone and it's subjective.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, before apparently the universe or Elon Musk or somebody is really mad at us for this episode, so before they get too much more mad and cut us off completely,
Yeah.
We'll just end it here. Super appreciated the conversation. It was a lot of fun. I feel like there's just so much more that we could talk about, so
Yeah.
we're gonna have to have you back on
Defo.
for sure at some point. So I really appreciate you taking your time out of your evening. And for anybody listening, go follow Joe, Kindred Joe, I believe, on your channels.
KildareJoe.
KildareJoe. My
Kildare, as
bad.
in kill.
Oh,
Kildare. Yeah. That's
you know
okay.
what? I'm just butchering this.
That's all right.
KildareJoe.
Yeah.
You'll find him, and he's got great content. Been doing a great job for doing it only just more than a year. That's super impressive. So, thanks for coming on, and got listeners out there. Tune in next week for another guest and another episode. We'll see you then.
Thanks so much, man. I really appreciate it. It was a pleasure talking to you.